What's up, boys and girls and everyone else? This is another science video episode for you. And for this episode, we will be going to talk about the process involved in evolutionary changes in an organism that leads to changes in the allele frequencies over time. Come join me today as we go over these four fundamental forces that triggers evolutionary changes, the mechanism of evolution. Alright, so here we are in our lesson for this video lesson. So we have here the mechanism of evolutionary change. Alright, so as we all know, that evolution means changes in the species or species change over time. Alright, so that is what we meant by evolution. And there are some several theories that we discussed before about evolution. So if you don't know what evolution is all about, the link is above this video. It's there. You can click that one and study first what is evolution. What is evolution all about before you have this video lesson that we have right here. Alright, so mechanism of evolutionary change. Alright, so what do we mean by mechanism? So mechanism means method of doing something, or it is a procedure or process on how something works or it is done. Okay, that is what we meant by mechanism. Or in a simple term, this is the process of evolutionary change. Alright, so there are several processes that we were going to talk about in this video lesson episode right here. And those processes are needed in order to trigger evolutionary change in an organism's allelic frequency in the population. Alright, so let's discover. But before we discover those mechanism, let's take a look first at these pictures that we have right here. Alright, so as you can see on this picture, what do you see? Alright, so if take a look at this picture, what do you see? Now you can put it on the comment section about your answer. What do you think are the organism found in this picture? Right. So there are three frogs on this picture and they are perfectly blended with the leaves on the background. Okay. So another picture. So we have right here a very unusual twig that we have, but there is an organism there. Okay, so you can put it on the comment section below this video. What do you think is the organism that is shown in this picture? If there is an organism, all right. So there is an organism there called the walking stick. So as you can see here, all right. So as you can see here, it is a large walking stick. This is its leg. Okay. So that is a perfectly blended, okay, organism, perfectly blended to its surrounding. So that is the walking stick. Another picture we have right here. All right. So what do you see, guys? Okay, what do you see on this picture? Again, you can put it in the comment section. What do you think is your perception on the picture that you have right here? Okay. So as you can see in this picture, we can see a head over here. Alright, so probably this is a grasshopper or another form of insect, okay, that we don't know. So because the picture was zoomed in, alright, so we don't know if it is a grasshopper or another type or kind of insect. Okay, so that is a grasshopper in this picture. How about this one? Okay, so what do you see on this picture that we have right here? Okay, so do you have any guess what is on that picture? All right, so we can see on this picture, if you look at this branch over here, so you can see the insect over here, right, which is the same color as the branch in which the insect clings on. Okay, so that is one amazing abilities of the animal that we have here on this picture. Okay. Next one, on this picture, what do you think is on the picture? Is it a real snake or another form of another organism, or is it just another organism? All right, so what do you think? Okay, so the one on the picture is this is an insect. All right, so this is an insect. Probably this is a caterpillar that looks like a snake. Alright, so one of the things that this caterpillar do is doing mimicry. Alright, so mimicry is just you just copy any form of organism. Alright, any kind of organism that is that looks like ferocious organism, or that looks like a big organism or large organism, that will make your predator hesitated from eating you. Okay, so this is a caterpillar that portrays a large snake, okay, in order to escape from its predator. Alright, so next one. Now, what do you see? Okay, in this picture, what do you see? So, is there something that you notice on this picture that we have right here? Alright, so if you notice something, yes, you are correct, that is an insect. Alright, so this is probably a moth. Okay, a different kind of moth, which has a saw-like feature over here. Alright, so this is its wing. Alright, so this is its wings. So something like that. Okay, so it is perfectly blended with its background, the tree trunk that we have right there. Alright, so what are these pictures all about? Alright, as you can see on this picture, they are featuring camouflage and mimicry. Alright, so perfectly, this organism perfectly blending to its surrounding, and or they perfectly copy one kind of organism to escape to their certain predator. The question here is, are this organism has this kind of ability before? Alright, is these organisms that we have, are these organisms that we have right now on these pictures that you have seen a while ago, do they have these abilities in the first place? Okay, do you think that they have these abilities in the first place? So if you know, if you have an opinion on that question, you can answer that in the comment section, or you can put your answer in the comment section below this video. Alright, so I don't think that this organism right here already had that kind of ability. Alright, so probably these organisms that we have right here didn't have that kind of ability long time ago. It's just developed over time due to some unescapable circumstances. Okay, so there are some situations that they need to escape from their predator, or they need to hunt for their own food. Alright, so over time, these organisms that we have right here develop this particular abilities in order for them to survive. Alright, so mimicry and camouflage are part of the mechanism of evolution that we were going to discuss today, and there are 4 of them. So allelic frequency in a population may change. So what is alleles? Alleles are form of genes. Alright, it can range from height, skin color, eye color, shape of the body parts, function of the body parts, so on and then so forth. Alright, so these are alleles. Alright, these are alleles, or in definition, this is form. Alleles are forms of genes. Alright, so the occurrences of these alleles in a population, alright, the probability, okay, of occurring or occurrences of certain alleles in a population can change over time using the 4 fundamental forces of evolution that we have right here. The 4 fundamental mechanism of evolution that we have right here. Now, without this mechanism, by all means, evolution will not happen. Okay? So what are these mechanisms? We have number 1, natural selection. And number 2, we have genetic drift. Number 3, we have mutations. And we have number 4, the 4th one, which is called the Geneflow. So what makes this 4 fundamental forces of evolution so important? Alright, so that is what we were going to discuss here in this topic, these 4 fundamental forces of evolution. Alright, so let's start with the natural selection. Alright, so here we are in our first mechanism of evolution, which is the natural selection. This is the first of the 4 mechanism. So natural selection, you have encountered this one in our previous video lesson about the theories of evolution by Charles Darwin. Okay, natural selection was an idea of Charles Darwin. It is an idea coming from Charles Darwin that the nature creates a pressure that challenges a organism to survive. Okay? So that is what natural selection according to him. Okay, so according to this particular statement that we have right here, that evolution acts through natural selection. Alright? And whereby the natural selection is supported by the following. We have reproductive and genetic qualities. So we have encountered in our previous video lesson that reproduction is very important in terms of evolution. Okay? For evolution to happen, you must have a reproduction. And at the same time, what is also needed, aside from reproduction, we have variation. Alright, so we have the reproduction and we have variation. Alright, so genetic qualities or variation that prove to be advantageous. That's the keyword here. That particular variation should be advantageous at all means. Alright, no matter what the challenge, no matter what challenge the nature will give to the organism, if the organism has an advantageous variation or quality, then therefore it will survive and prevail to the future generation or into the future generation. Alright? And that is why reproduction is very important in giving out or in distributing this particular variation among the offspring. Alright, so that is the importance of reproduction. And also, without reproduction, the survival of the species of a certain organism will also be affected. Okay, so that is what we meant by the natural selection. Okay, over here. And based on what Darwin studied about the Galapagos Island, so he found out that the finches on that particular island is are all, they look different in terms of beaks, but according to his study, right, further studies about these finches that he obtained on that island, he found that these finches originate from one common ancestor, alright, on the island. And the finches are product of natural selection according to him. Now, the beaks that you have on this picture, are modifications, alright? So these are modifications of the modifications on the organism based on the pressure given by nature to this group of organism that we have right here. Alright, so that is the finches. And not only that, we have this peppered moth that we have on this picture. Okay, so these peppered moth are also product of natural selection. Alright, so the existence of the black peppered moth, alright, is a product of natural selection. So to tell you a story about this one, the first who came here in this picture is the white peppered moth. Alright, when United Kingdom or England is not yet polluted during that time, white peppered moth is dominant in the population. Alright, so white peppered moth is dominant in the population, but when the Industrial Revolution came, a lot of combustion, a lot of pollution was seen in England. Then therefore the trees, the walls, alright, and anything in which these peppered moths cling into becomes polluted. Alright, so this black background that you see here, this is covered with soot. Alright, so they are covered with soot. So soot is a product of combustion. Alright, so what happened here is the moth that we have right here, the white peppered moth that you have right here, develops this genetic transformation, or there's a mutation in this in the genes of this peppered moth, then therefore created another variation, which is the black peppered moth that we have right here. Okay, so it created this black peppered moth, which is best suitable to the environment that is given right now. Alright, now if you will be a predator, on this kind of environment, you will likely to eat this white peppered moth over the black peppered moth that we have over here, because as a predator, you can easily see this white peppered moth in the background, while the dark peppered moth is very hard to find. Okay, so this is the story of the peppered moth in England based on the changes in the environment that happened on that particular area. Alright, so part of the natural selection is the adaptation. Alright, so in order to push the challenge or in order to overcome the challenge given by nature, the organism is required to adapt. Okay? If the organism didn't organism didn't adapt, then the organism might likely not to survive in the challenge that the nature given to that organism. All right, so what is adaptation? This is a process where population becomes better suited to its habitat. Okay? Now, just a misconception. The population did not obtain these particular genetic changes in just one snap. All right? So the population cannot obtain these changes, cannot apply these changes and be able to adapt immediately. All right? It will take a long time before the overall population can adapt, okay, truly to that particular environment. So it starts from one individual or one or two individuals, then it will be distributed all throughout. Then those who cannot survive will likely to die, then they will be replaced by a new individual which is best suited to that environment. So it will take a long time. All right? So again, that is a misconception that population immediately better suited to their habitat. All right? So that is a misconception. That is not true. All right? So it refers to the feature which especially important for the organism survival. So what is that feature? Most of the time, the feature is always the body parts. All right? So always the body parts. Okay? In some cases, this is in a form of coloration. It is in a form of an extra part. All right? It is in a form of the function of the part, so on and then so forth. All right? So regardless of which, these body parts must be important to the organism survival. Only the organism survival. Okay? So these body parts again will not give. All right? So natural selection will not give the organism what they need. All right? Natural selection will grant the organism survival based on what they need. Alright. So, let's take a look at the things about adaptation. So, the first one that we have right here is the changes in habitat. Alright, changes in habitat triggers evolution. Okay? So, why does it trigger evolution? Because the first thing that will happen is it will trigger genetic changes. Right? So, it will trigger genetic changes. Once there is a transition in the habitat, genetic changes, the genes in the DNA, alright, in the region of the DNA will likely to change. Alright, so regardless of that change, again, it is based on the changes in the environment. It's the environment that will dictate this change in the DNA. Alright, next one is habitat tracking. Alright, now the moment that the organism finds a habitat or looks for a suitable habitat, they develop this particular set of traits, all right, that enables them to survive in that particular environment. All right. Then there is this extinction. All right. So extinction is the massive loss of gene pool. All right, in a certain organism. So automatically, if there's a change in the environment, extinction will likely to occur. Especially if those organisms cannot survive these sudden changes in the environment, then therefore, the variation of the genes that is found in that organism will likely to die off as well. Alright, so it will likely to die off as well due to the idea that the habitat or the environment changes or transition from one situation to another. Alright, so that's the first one. So we have right here the dinosaurs. Alright, so as we all know, dinosaurs are cold-blooded animals. So when this giant asteroid came here on Earth, alright, so when it crashed here on Earth, it creates a lot of climatic changes in the planet. So in which those changes cannot compromised or cannot adapted by this organism, the dinosaurs, then therefore they died. So since they are reptiles, they are cold-blooded animals, they cannot adjust the temperature of their body suited to the environment. So that is why instead of thriving on that new climate, what happens is they are all extinct. All right, they die eventually. All right, and eventually extinct. All right, so that is why mammals mammals dominated the landscape after this event. Okay, so the next one, polar bears are product of habitat tracking. All right, so polar bears are product of habitat tracking, and grizzly bears, black bears, and any type or any kind of bear on this planet are product of habitat tracking. Okay, so next one is the intimate relationship or co-adaptation. So what do we mean by co-adaptation? Alright, so co-adaptation means when the other organism adapts, survive, the other organism will survive as well. Okay, so that is co-adaptation. If the other organism evolve, the other organism also will evolve. Okay, so we have here some examples of co-adaptation. So we have mimicry. Okay, so mimicry is a form of a co-adaptation in which the organism copies a certain organism in order to survive and not to be eaten by some predators, or can be used for hunting purposes. Alright, the second one is parasitism. So parasitism is one of the symbiotic relationship in which one is benefited and the other one is affected in the process. Okay, so that is a form of co-adaptation. Next one, predator and prey. Alright, so one is benefited and also one is affected or being eaten. Alright, so being eaten in the process. So next one is mutualism. Both organisms are benefited in the process. Okay, so mutualism. Example of this is in mutualism. Okay, orchids and tree, something like that. Okay, orchids and tree. Okay, so the orchid plant clings on the tree trunk. Alright, in which the orchids benefit from the tree trunk because that serves as their habitat, and the tree trunk doesn't get anything or doesn't affect, or it is not affected by the presence of the orchid plant on its tree trunk. Alright, so that is mutualism. Okay, so another one is pollination syndrome. Alright, so the colors of the petals of the flower, okay, it creates this kind of situation in which the birds and the bees will likely to pollinate. Alright, will likely to be attracted to these flowers in order for the pollen of these flowers to get to be scattered. Alright, to be distributed, okay, to another flower or something like that. Okay, so that is the pollination syndrome. Alright, so some examples of intimate relationships. So we have right here the praying mantis. Okay, so it is doing some camouflage. Alright, over here. Okay, it uses the leaves. Alright, it uses the leaves as a protection. Alright, as it blends to these dried leaves in the background. Alright, next one is the sunflower that you have over here. So the reason why they have attractive petals is because the eyes of the butterfly, birds, and some birds, or usual pollinators of these plants, are attracted to the colors of their petals that you have right there. So therefore, the eyes of those animals have an evolutionary feature that is only capable of looking at this feature that we have here on these plants. Okay, so the eyes of the birds and the butterflies and bees, something like that, enables them to track down these plants for pollination purposes. Okay, or getting food as well. Okay, like the one that we have right here. Okay, so the Rafflesia, if you will notice, no birds and bees and butterflies will come near it because they are not attractive to this particular plant. But the plant itself creates a solution on that. Okay, by emitting foul odor. So how does this plant do pollination? Alright, so by creating a foul odor, by emitting a foul odor, they be able to attract pollinators. And that is not bees, that is not also butterfly, that is not also birds, but flies. Alright, yes, flies, the house fly. Okay, so these flies is attracted to the foul odor of this plant, and therefore it be able to scatter the pollen to the next Rafflesia or to the other Rafflesia plant nearby. Okay, so that is the solution of this plant in terms of pollination. All right. Now, the third one that we have right here is brain function or the internal adaptation. It includes the brain function, temperature regulation, effectivity of the immune system. So let's start first with the brain function. Our brain went through a lot of processes before it became like that. Okay, especially the hypothalamus. All right. So from animalistic behavior, all right, that we have in our brain million years ago, it become like the one that we have right now. Okay. So all the functions of your brain, all right, all the functions of your brain that controls any functions inside your body is an evolutionary feature. All right, it is an evolutionary feature of your brain. Okay, so that is an internal adaptation. The brain controls which is lower, which is higher, makes it balance, and when something that is needed, it is secreted, something like that. So the brain controls everything inside your body. All right, next one. We have the temperature regulation. So our body, not only our body but also in other animals, they have a better way of regulating temperature. For example, there are some animals who do hibernation because that is their internal adaptation, hibernation. There are some who do migration, okay, because their body cannot tolerate that lower temperature, then they go somewhere else. All right. So our body as well, we shiver and we perspire. All right, we sweat because it is a form of temperature regulation. Okay. So, cold-blooded animals, warm-blooded animals have different way of controlling their temperature. Alright, next one. We have effectivity of the immune system. Alright, so the immune system that we have right now, so is better adapted. Alright, so better adapted to internal situation inside your body, especially if you are contracted with infection. Your immune system will be the one who will deal with that particular infection. Now, this particular infection is being memorized by this immune system for it to adapt if there is another kind of infection that will get inside your body. Okay, so it will try to adapt. So that's the reason why people who contracted with chickenpox before will never have to be contracted with a chickenpox at the same time. Alright, so because of the immune system. But now we have ways of overriding this immune system. We have now vaccination. Alright, so we have now vaccines. Now, the vaccines is a form of improving the immune system. Okay? It is improving of immune system. For example, we have polio vaccines, we have diphtheria vaccine, something like that, malaria vaccine, something like that. That can help our immune system to improve itself. All right, to improve itself rather than by doing it naturally. We do it artificially. All right, so we do it artificially on the immune system. All right, so that is the internal adaptation. So brain, the eyes, okay, our eyes is adapted to the amount of light entering to our eyes. So if the light is low, it will adapt. If the light is too much, it will also adapt to counteract the effects of light in your eyes. Okay, so that's internal adaptation. Alright, the fourth and final types of adaptation that we have right here is called compromise and conflict. Okay, so what do you mean by compromise? This is the settlement. Alright, so agreeable settlement between the two. Alright, between the two parties. Alright, next one, we have the conflict. Alright, so conflict, we all know that if one party is did not agree to something, they will try to argue on that particular object or something. Okay? Now, examples of compromising conflict between adaptations is camouflage and sexual selection. Alright, so let's start first with first example. So we have here a picture. Alright. Okay, will you please comment down in the comment section below this video, how many insects do you see? Alright, or is there something do you see on the picture aside from leaves that you have on that picture? Alright, so please write it down in the comment section. So if you see some insect or if you see something, how many are they? Alright, so how many are there in the picture? Okay, so we have here. Alright, so we have here an insect. So unfortunately, I forgot the name of this insect. Okay, unfortunately, I forgot this one. So if you know the name of this insect, please write it down in the comment section. So let me know. Okay, so this insect look like a leaf. Alright, a dried leaf or something like that. And this is a very effective form of protection to predators. Okay, so why is this one why is this one part of the conflict compromise? Alright, why is it conflict? Actually, this is a conflict. Alright, so why is it conflict? Because this will alright, so this will conflict with what is the adaptation of the other organism. Okay, if the other organism adapted to be suited to that particular environment, then therefore this particular organism has also adapted to that environment, but its adaptation is conflict to other organisms. Okay, this conflicted to other organism. Alright, so that is part of the conflict that we have right here. And there are some parts that it is compromised. Okay, why is it compromised? Because we have here the adaptation of the plant as in the background. Alright, the adaptation of the plant in the background compromise with the adaptation of the insect in your picture as well. Okay, so they agreed. Okay, so these two agreed to certain point that they have this adaptation, camouflage, and the other one also we have this adaptation. Then therefore, they likely to this particular organism that we have right here likely to agree on some point. Okay, so that is camouflage. Now, in terms of conflict, there's no other animal to explain the conflict in adaptation rather than the peacock that we have right here. Okay, so now will you please write it in the comment section what is the sex of the organism that we have right here? Okay, is it a male or a female? Alright, write it down in the comment section below. Okay, if you have a prior idea about this one. Okay, so in terms of conflict, and sometimes it is compromise. Okay, let's start first with the conflict on this situation that we have right here. The peacock that you have over here is a male peacock. Okay, it is a male peacock. Now, what makes it a conflict? Alright, so what makes it a conflict? Number one is this kind of evolutionary feature is a disadvantage. Alright, this is a clearly disadvantage because if you have this kind of feature as a predator, you will likely to see immediately the animal because of its coloration. Very colorful feathers that you have right here. Okay, there's no need to hide, there's no need to stalk. Okay, the prey. Okay, the prey is already or can be seen. Okay, immediately. All right. Now, that is the conflict. Now, in terms of compromise, so what is the purpose of these feathers that you have right there? The purpose of the feathers that you have right there is for sexual selection. Alright? It is for sexual selection, then therefore, that makes it the compromise. Okay? You have like this, but I will have like this feature. You have a bad feature, you have a disadvantaged feature, but I also have a good feature. Okay, that will help me. Okay, so that is the compromise here. Okay, now the female peacock will select the male peacock that has a very colorful presentation of feathers. Okay, so especially the eyes that you have right here. these eyes are very important. Okay, these are not only for decoration, this is for sexual selection. Now, why? If you may ask, why? It's because of one thing. Alright, it's because of one thing. Female wants their offspring to carry out the genes present on this male that contains this colorful manifestation that you have right here. Okay, the female wants this particular genes to be inherited by their offspring. Alright, so meaning to say that if a male peacock is more attractive, then therefore there is also more female mates. There are also more female mates that this male will go through. Okay, so there's one research about this one. Does the eye affects the sexual selection? And the answer is yes. Okay, the research done was the researchers cut the eyes that you have right here. They decreased the number of eyes found in the peacock. Okay, so they decreased the number of eyes. So only they left only few. Okay, they left only few eyes in the peacock. So what happens there is the females did not select that particular peacock. Okay, so that is the result. It did not select that particular peacock. Instead, the female selected the peacock which has more eyes and more colorful eyes in the process. Okay, so that tells us that this truly, the one that you have right here, is one of a compromising feature of evolution. Okay, so that is the peacock. Okay, peacock feathers. Okay, next one. Okay, camouflage over here. Okay, again, that is also a conflict and compromise. Conflict to the predator, compromise to the environment. Alright, to the surrounding in which this organism lived. Yan. Okay. Now, since we are talking about adaptation, so if an organism adapts, then therefore it creates a multitude of new forms. Okay, we called it the adaptive radiation. Okay, when we talk about radiation, this one came from adaptation, and radiation means it starts from the center. Okay, something that is moving away from the center. Okay, so that is radiation. Okay, so meaning to say that when we do have adaptive radiation, this is the process of creating new species coming from ancestral ones. Okay, so this is the process of creating new species, alright, coming from the ancestral ones. In the case of the birds, in the case of the finches that Darwin observed, that is a form of adaptive radiation. Alright, now what causes adaptive radiation? Number one is change in the environment. When there's a change in environment, examples, availability of resources, ultimate challenges, okay? Ultimate challenges, aside from the ability of the resources. And because of these changes in the environment, it opens new roles. Niches means roles. Okay, these are roles of organism in that environment. Okay, these are the roles of the organism in that environment. It's either the organism is a consumer, a producer, or a predator, a prey, or a pollinator. What else? Parasite, something like that. So those are roles. Okay, those are roles designated by nature to a certain organism. Okay, now if there's a change in the environment, these roles also changes. Okay, so there are times that the predator becomes the prey, then the prey becomes the predator, vice versa, something like that. Okay, so there are times that one organism is becomes a parasite when the other one, when before it is not, something like that. So these particular changes in the environment creates these new roles, and because of these new roles, you have now you created now a new form of organism. Okay, coming out from their ancestral origin. Okay, that is adaptive radiation. Now, what do you call this new species that was created? Okay? What do you call this new species that was created based or because of these environmental changes? We called it speciation. Alright? So we called it speciation. So new biological species arise in the process. Okay? So this is the story of the speciation according to Charles Darwin. So how does the finches, or how did the finches be able to create different or modification on its beak? Okay. Now, there are several islands that you have right here. Okay, so I will just make a hypothetical story just to fit in with the speciation. Okay, so for example, these islands were once connected before. Okay, so these islands were once connected before the water came in. Alright, so the water came in, the islands were separated. So it happens that the organism were left, example birds, the organism were left on this island. Okay, so we're left on this island. So I think it's not better suited than that. So let's use another scenario. Okay, suppose this is the situation. It is an island it is an island environment. Okay? So the bird from this main island flew from this island to this island. Okay? So this one over here. So this island has a different environment on the mainland. Alright, so this island that we have here has different environment. So therefore, there will be a genetic change that will happen. So speciation will likely to occur because there's a change in the environment. So from species A or bird A, it becomes bird B. Okay. Now if you may ask if this bird B is different from bird A, yes, it is now different. Because they have now different sets of body parts which better adapted to the environment that they live. Okay, that they live on. Okay, so another situation, the bird B, because of some environmental changes again, it flew and migrate to another island that we have over here. Okay, so the bird B becomes the bird C. Okay, again, if you may ask, is bird C different from bird B? Yes, completely different. Okay, probably beaks, probably wings, probably the talons that they have, something like that. So, or behavior, okay, things like that. So, those are the differences. Now, bird C, alright, so bird C flew to another island which has a different environment from the previous island the bird went. Alright, so we have the sea. Then therefore, the environment is somehow advantage to letter C. It is somehow advantage to letter C, and there are some mutations, there are some genetic changes that happened, and therefore it produces another. Alright, it produces another form of organism, or form of that bird or organism. Okay, so the D, alright, so the bird D moved back to the previous island in which the bird C inhabited before. So unfortunately, the bird C didn't survive on that particular island, so it went extinct. So it was replaced by bird D. Alright, now the bird D flew on another island from the previous island that we have on the first one. It flew from the first island. So what happened there is because of mating. Okay, so because of mating with another form. So we have here the B, C, D. Because of mating of these forms of birds, it produces now another form of organism. Okay, because of that situation. Okay, so this is the story on how the birds from one organism, alright, from one organism give rise to different forms of organism. And this is solely based on the environment in which the birds lives. Okay, this is based on the environment where they lives. Okay, so that is the key thing here. Okay, so that is speciation. Alright, so this is the product. So probably of what happened to the birds. So there are birds that are that can suck nectar. There are birds that can crack open the nuts. There are birds that can crush leaves. All right, so on and then so forth. Okay. All right, another example of speciation is the case of the bears. Okay, originally the bears are color brown, and probably they came from brown bear. Okay. Now what happened here is because of the changes in the habitat, okay, changes of food source, okay, happens to be that the bears that we have right here, from one bear, it became a myriad of different variations that we have right here. Okay, so for example, in terms of food, the food of giant panda is different from the food of brown bear. The giant panda is a vegetarian. They like to eat bamboo shoots, something like that, while the brown bear are accustomed in eating salmons or fishes, something like that. Okay, also with this one, okay, we have the black bear as well. Okay, there are some black bears like the sun bear that you have right here, eats termites, okay, and land ants, okay, land termites and then ants. Okay, so this is the sun bear. Now the polar bear, in terms of habitat, it is accustomed in living in polar regions, while other bears that you have right here cannot live on that regions. Okay, so based on the food source, based on the habitat, it can create new forms of organism. Alright, so we have here the cats that you have. Okay, the cats, we have the domesticated cat and so on and so forth. Now with the action of plate tectonics, all right, and some actions of humans, we be able to create a lot of variation of these cats that you have over here. Okay, so from a non-domesticated ones, the tiger, the lion, the leopard, the jaguar, it became now more and more domesticated. Something like we have the cats that you have right here. Where is that? Okay, so I can see this on this picture. All right, so this one, I think it's not. It is not this one. Okay, so we have here the domesticated cat. So I cannot see it. Okay, right now. Okay, so part of this cat family that you have right here are also the domesticated cat. Okay, now some of them are not domesticated. They are product of the changes in the environment. Okay. So, for example, we have here the lynx, the bobcat, which can be found on temperate regions of this planet, in Canada, in some parts of US, something like that. There are some that lives in polar regions, like the one that you have over here, the snow leopard. All right, so there are some that can live in, they can tolerate any kind of temperatures. Okay, so these are the cat family. Okay, so another one is the dogs. Alright, so dogs or family Canidae. Alright, so there are a lot of dogs. Not only the dog that you see on your house, the domesticated ones. The domesticated dogs are product of human intervention. Alright, so they are a product of human intervention, and the ancestral dogs were domesticated by humans, and that's the story behind that one. Okay, so we have different kind of dogs. So we have wolf, we have Arctic fox over here, Arctic foxes. So we have jackals, coyote, does. Alright, so African wild dog, hyenas. Okay, so those are examples of dogs that is a product of changes in the habitat. Okay, so example, the hyenas, they are accustomed in living in dry places like in Africa, right? So we have here the wolf, which is accustomed in living in cold places, also temperate places, something like that. So on and then so forth. All right. So these are the dog family. All right. So up next, okay. So we are done with the natural selection mechanism that we have right here. So again, natural selection is very important in the evolutionary process. It allows the organism with advantage genetic qualities, all right, with advantageous genetic quality to survive, and at the same time to reproduce and to be inherited by these genetic qualities, these advantageous genetic qualities to be inherited by the next generation. All right? So again, this is the natural selection. All right. So here we are in the second mechanism of evolution. We have the genetic drift. All right. So this mechanics or this mechanism is different from the natural selection. All right. So instead of the environment, okay, dictates what kind or what will happen to the organism. So this is a random event. Okay, this is a random event that can happen on the organism that will change the allele frequency of that certain group of organisms. All right, so we are talking here population. Okay. So again, this is a random event, and most of the event under the genetic drift happens by chance. Okay, so later I will enumerate what are those events that happened by chance. Okay, and this particular influences the changes in the allele frequency. Again, what is an allele? Allele is a form of a gene. Alright, allele is a form of a gene. So example right here, we have brown fur or white fur of rabbits. Okay, so the occurrences of that particular alleles is said to be called as allele frequency. Alright, so the occurrence of a certain trait, okay, a certain trait in a population is called allele frequency. Alright, so for example, how many dominant, alright, so how many percentage is the dominant how many percentage of organism contain the dominant trait, how many percentage of the population contains the recessive trait, so on and so forth. Alright, so genetic drift is product of sampling error, alright, from generation to generation. So this is, what do you mean by sampling error? So this is how you obtain the number of alleles. In this case, how you obtain the number of alleles that occurs in one group of one group of organism, and the number percentage of those alleles can be dominant or recessive, so you can compare them, okay, and analyze it if it is gradually increasing or it is gradually decreasing over time. Okay, so this is the sampling error. Alright, so now in genetic drift, the process may cause gene variants to disappear completely. Okay, so there are some events that can lead to the disappearance of that certain variant completely. Okay, so when it happens, there is a reduction on the genetic variability of those organisms. Okay, so for example, we have here some catastrophes or disasters like earthquake, okay, wildfire, something like that, or a disease, okay, that can be attributed to the reduction of the gene variability. Now, if you may ask, what is the difference between genetic drift and natural selection? Alright, so natural selection or environmental or adaptive pressure, okay, do not drive changes due to genetic drift. Okay, so it means that the environmental and adaptive pressure are still there. Okay, it doesn't care. All right, so it doesn't care whether it is if there's a genetic drift that will happen or not. It is still there. Okay, it doesn't depend. All right, so it doesn't depend on genetic drift. Okay, the pressure that you have on the environment. So therefore, natural selection is completely independent. Okay, completely independent on this case. Okay, so genetic drift is dependent on the event that will happen on the environment. Okay, and this random event can create the reduction of the genetic variability of the said group of organism. Okay, we are talking about population right here. Okay, so now there are two things that you need to take note here. There are two forms of genetic drift. We have the population bottleneck. Alright, so we have the population bottleneck and the founder effect. Okay, these are some examples of random drift and have significant effects in a small population. Okay, so the question here is, what which size of population in which genetic drift can have a larger effect? Okay, which size of population? Is it the large population or the small population? Okay, if so, how? Okay, so let's try to find it here in this mechanism. Okay, so first one is the bottleneck. Bottleneck occurs when there is a sudden sharp decline in the population size. Alright, due to environmental factors such as natural disasters like earthquake, tsunamis, epidemics that can decimate the whole population. Alright, example of these epidemics is the Black Plague that happened on Europe. So it decimated almost half of the population of Europe. Okay, so another one is predation or habitat destruction. Okay, so in our current situation right now, so habitat destruction destroys or reduce the variation among variation among genes in these organisms that lives on a certain area. So what happened there is okay, if there are no variation of genes with this organism, they will likely to extinct. Okay, they will likely to extinct if there is something happened or there is a random event that happened on the place that they live in. Okay, so those are the things. So earthquakes and tsunamis, why they are random? You know that one already, because you cannot tell when the earthquake will happen and you cannot tell when the tsunamis will happen, so on and so forth. These are random events. Okay, no one knows when will that happen. Now, when it happens, it gives or it wreaks havoc to the organism's allele frequency. Alright, to the population's allele frequency. Okay, it's either it will reduce, okay, if it will reduce or it will affect, it will just have an effect on the frequency of allele that are found in that certain population. Okay, because of these environmental factors. Again, bottleneck effect is dependent on these random environmental factors that you have right here. Okay, so bottleneck effect has is dependent on this. Okay, so alright, so this is the bottleneck effect. So as per definition that we have earlier, so this is caused by catastrophic events, okay, that happened in that particular environment. So whether it is an earthquake or tsunamis or pandemics or whatever it is, so as long that it is a catastrophic event that drastically reduce the population. So what do we have right here? You can do this one as, at home as well. Okay, you can get a small ball with color and you can put it on the bottle. So that is why it is called bottleneck effect. So the bottleneck, okay, so this bottleneck that you have right here symbolizes the catastrophic event. Okay, for example, we have an earthquake. Alright, so the earthquake is the bottleneck event that we are talking about. Okay, so the earthquake drastically reduced the population. Okay, so it is a random event. So no one will choose, okay, no one will select who will survive, okay, on that particular process. No one will select that process in this process. So whatever alleles, okay, the yellow ones and then the blue ones, whatever alleles that survive, and then that's it. Okay, so that's it. Then after that particular event, the number of individuals, okay, the number of individuals that that survived on that particular bottleneck event are called the survivors. Okay, now as you can see here, the effect of the particular event drastically changed the allele frequency. Alright, so for example, if this is 50% blue and 50% yellow, so probably this is somehow in different percentage. So yellow now has different percentage over the blue ones. So when this surviving population reproduce, it might likely, alright, by probability, the yellow ones will be decimated or will be replaced by the blue ones. So the genes or the alleles, the yellow alleles is likely to lose on the next generation as the bottleneck effect happen. Okay, so what you have right here, again, this is a small population, so the effect is somehow noticeable, okay, on the alleles. Okay, so that is the bottleneck effect. Okay. So we have right here example of the bottleneck effect. Okay, so for example, we have a large genetic diversity of population. Okay, so we have it right here. Okay. Okay, so in generation 1, the frequency of alleles is the same. So for example, we have 0.5 or 50% this trait or variation, and 50% is this one. Okay, suppose that there is again, this random event has nothing to do with the adaptive pressures of natural selection. Again, genetic drift is completely independent over the natural selection. Okay? So, let's continue. Okay, we have the generation 2. Randomly, due to catastrophic natural man-made event, natural or man-made event, it happens that it decimated this group. Alright, so it decimated this group. So what happened is on the generation 3, because of that bottleneck event, what we left here is the variations that we have right here based on the surviving population. These are the variation left. Again, the natural selection has nothing to do with the one that is left that we have, the one that is left on the case that we have right here. Okay? Next, on generation 3, since this variation that you have right here, this variation that you have over here is so few. Okay, it is few or it is small. What happens here is completely over the generation when this group of surviving population reproduce over the generation, this particular trait that you have over here, this trait here, will be completely masked. Okay, it will be completely masked out of the population. Okay, so what happened here in the 4th generation, that particular allele disappeared completely thanks to the bottleneck event that happened in the generation number 2. Okay, so that is the population bottleneck. Again, this is caused by catastrophic natural or man-made event that decimated the alleles that you have over here. Okay, so that is the population bottleneck. Alright, so next one is the founder's effect. Okay, next one is the founder's effect. Founder's effect is the loss of genetic variation that occurs when new population is established by a small number of individuals that were cleaved. So what do you mean by cleaved? Cleaved means separated from the larger population. Alright, now the founder effect is somehow example of founder effect are those communities. Okay, are those communities that has a certain culture and they are isolated to another or to other large populations. Okay, for example, some indigenous tribes, something like that. Okay, or a community that is made up of a certain religion that doesn't interact with larger population, something like that. So, okay, so this is a founder effect. So how does it happen? Okay, for example, this is the mother population. Okay, now this group of people that you have right here decided to create a community separated from this group that you have over here. So we have now a new community over here. Okay, we have now the new community. Now, since the community doesn't have any variation at all, so as you can see, most of them are yellow and one of them is red. Okay, so do you think there's a variation here? So no. Okay, so there's no variation here. Okay, so there's no variation, and at the same time, it is very small. Okay, it is very small. So what happened here is, okay, so what happened here is there's no variability, therefore it leads to loss of genetic or loss of the allele, okay, in this new population that we have right here. Okay, So, loss of genetic variability can be the result of this establishment of the new population. Okay, most of the time, some people in the indigenous tribe, alright, so if there's an indigenous tribe, there should be no population or no person that can interact that indigenous tribe because some of them are not adapted to certain disease. For example, the people in the Sentinel Island. If you're familiar with the people in the Sentinel Island that is located in the Indian Ocean, okay, there is a rule there, or there is a law that no one should go to that island. It's because of one thing. Aside from the people there on the Sentinel Island, the people there are very violent. Okay, so those indigenous tribe on that island is very violent. We do not allow new diseases, that is the modern diseases that we have right now, to infect these people because these people doesn't have any immunity on these modern diseases that we have. Okay, so that is why this population, this indigenous tribe, is very it doesn't have any variation. Okay, it doesn't have any genetic variability. Okay, so that is one of the examples. Okay, so if you have more examples, just write it down in the comment section below. Okay, so let me know if you do have any examples on mind about this particular founder effect that we have right here. Okay, again, you notice that we have a small population over here. Okay, you notice that you have a small population. So a small population that contains a very small variation of alleles will lead to the loss of genetic variability. Okay, so small population. Small. Alright, so let's go back to the bottleneck. Okay, let's have another scenario. What if that catastrophic event, okay, for example, an earthquake, occurred in an area where there is a small population? What do you think will happen? Okay, suppose an earthquake happened in a small populated area. What do you think will happen? Okay, so write it down in the comment section below. Okay, let me know your answer, okay, about that question. Okay, so the answer is the whole genetic pool or the whole gene pool will likely to be decimated. If there's a fortunate person who can survive, then therefore there is a small genetic variability that will happen and loss of genetic variability at the end. Okay, so just like what we have right here, so it starts with large genetic population. It starts with large genetic population because of the bottleneck effect. It leads to the small. Okay, it decimated the whole population. It leads to a small population that you have right here and small variation. So therefore, at the end of the generation 4, the loss of genetic variability is noticed. Okay, so as you can see here, there's no variation that you have on the final population. There's no variation because at the first place, on the generation 3, you have small population. Okay? So how much more if you started on small population, an event or a catastrophic event happened, then what will happen now? So that will be the loss of genetic variability. And that was the population bottlenecks effect on the small and large population. Okay? So same as with this founder effect that you have right here. Okay? So again, small population are affected. Okay, so another example or another thing that will lead to another example of genetic drift we have right here, we call the isolation. Alright, so notice these two squirrels that you have right here. Okay, although they look similar, but they look different from each other. Okay, so they look different from each other. Now, these two squirrels are from the Grand Canyon environment in United States. Okay, Grand Canyon. Now, because of the separation of that canyon, the squirrels, okay, that you have right here was separated as well. So, developing new organism. So, isolation can lead to speciation as well. Okay? So isolation can lead to speciation as well. So as you can see here, it gives rise because of that event, the separation of the Grand Canyon. It forms now the new species that we have right here. Okay, so these two new organisms. Okay, so that was isolation. And there are many forms of isolation, not only the geographic. So the one that I show you, this one is a product of geographic isolation. Okay, so that is geographic isolation. The second type of isolation is called behavioral. Alright, so this is the second type. So in behavioral isolation, okay, when an organism exhibits different behavior over the large number of organisms, okay, for example, like the one that we have right here. Okay, this organism doesn't have any idea what the behavior is all about because this organism is not accustomed to that behavior. Alright? It is not accustomed to that behavior. So, it means that it can create a new form of organism or new form of species. So, behavioral isolation can create a new form or can lead to speciation. Alright, another example of isolation that we have right here is the temporal. Alright, so what do you mean by temporal? This is a type of isolation in which the reproduction, the timing of the reproduction is affected by the seasons and the days, the temperature or whatever on that particular area. For example, we have these two flowers that you have right here, or two plants. Okay, one is already bloom or already bloomed into flower, and the other one is still it's just sprouting its flower. Okay, so now the difference in terms of their reproduction is also a result, or it can result to a new form of organism or a new form of species or speciation. It can lead to speciation. Now, the differences in reproduction, in timing of the reproduction, can lead to speciation. Okay, so again, the timing of the reproduction is affected by the seasons, the day and night cycle, something like that, temperature, so on and so forth. Okay, it can lead to speciation as well. That is temporal isolation. Alright, so that was the different types of isolation. Okay, so it can also, it also causes, it's also part of your genetic drift. Okay, those isolations. Okay, now the takeaway. Alright, so the takeaway on this mechanism. Now, the effect of genetic drift is larger in small population. Larger in small population. But the effect of it is smaller in larger population. Okay? So that is inversely proportional. Okay? The genetic drift is the effect of genetic drift is inversely proportional to the number or to the population. The larger the population, the smaller effect. The larger or the smaller the population, the larger the effect of genetic drift. Okay, again, genetic drift is examples of genetic drift. We have bottleneck effect, which is the bottleneck effect is a form of drift or genetic drift that is caused by catastrophic event that can decimate the population. Meanwhile, the founder effect is a type of genetic drift in which a small population was separated from a larger population. Okay? Therefore, genetic drift can lead to loss of genetic variability, and eventually, most cases, it can lead to extinction. Okay? It can lead to extinction. Okay? So, if there is a loss of genetic variability, there is a because adaptive pressure is not affected by genetic drift, then therefore, the adaptive pressure, if we put that into place, and you have a loss, or if you have a very small variation in your population, then therefore it can lead to extinction. Alright, so here we are in the third mechanism of evolution, the mutation. Alright, so if you don't have any idea about mutation, okay, so mutation is on that link. You can watch the video lesson about mutation. if you want to get some information about the concepts of this mechanism. All right. So, mutation is neither good or bad. Okay? And most of the time, the effects of mutation is good to the organism. Especially if the organism wants to adapt to that certain environment. Okay? So, mutation creates variation. Always remember that one. Mutation creates variation. Now, without mutation, it is impossible for evolution to happen. Okay, without mutation. Okay, so there are several types of mutation. We have the gene mutation. Okay, so if there is an alteration in the bases or codons of the DNA, yan, that is called the gene mutation. Now, if there is a deformities, or there are deformities that are found in your chromosome, then therefore that is called chromosomal mutation, such as deletion, alright, duplication, or inversion. So those are chromosomal mutation. Alright, so those things, okay, these two types of mutation, alright, so this two groups of mutation that we have right here creates this variation, okay, in the organism. Okay, so most of the time the effects of mutation are good in the organism. Okay, so especially in the organism's survival. Okay, now who dictates the mutation? Obviously, the very first mechanism, the natural selection. Okay, the first one. Okay, the environmental pressure, the adaptive pressures in the environment triggers the changes in the genes. Okay, that can lead to another variation of that said organism. Okay, so that is mutation. Okay, so the fourth and final mechanism of evolution that we have right here is called the Geneflow. So what do we mean by the Geneflow? This is the transfer of genes from the gene pool of one population to another. Okay, so sounds familiar. So this particular mechanism is associated to the word migration. Okay, this is associated to the word migration, and humans are a very good example of gene flow. Okay, humans are very good example of gene flow. Okay, so now gene flow may change the frequency of the alleles. Okay, so if there are alleles on that particular area, or if there are if a particular area has a small variation of alleles, and then suddenly another organism with different alleles suddenly join that particular population. For example, I have here a small population that has a small variation of alleles, and then suddenly a new organism arrives on that particular population. Okay, so a new organism arrives on that population, then therefore it creates increase the variation of that alleles in that particular population. Okay, so one of the causes is migration. Okay, one of the causes is migration, and since individuals can mate, alright, individuals can mate or can reproduce, then therefore it increases, alright, so it increases the genetic variability at the end of the day. Okay? For the next generation, it will increase the variability. So, gene flow is very important in promoting evolution. Okay? Now, the introduction of new alleles, as I've said earlier, it increases the variability. And it increases also the combination of traits. It allows the combination of new traits. Alright? So, examples. Okay, so people, okay, people marrying a foreigner, alright, for example, a Filipino woman marries an American man. Okay, so they will develop new variability. The offspring will have new variability or variation. Alright, so if you marry another race, for example, from Africa, something like that, married a European individual, so therefore it creates a new variation. All right, so is this an advantage? Yes, that is an advantage. So it counters the it counters the effect of the genetic drift. Okay, so Geneflow counters the effect of the genetic drift. But there's one thing. There's a catch here. So if that individual who moved to a new population, for example, that individual moved to a new population, what happens to the old one, where the individual came from? This one loses the genetic variability. Alright? So this one loses the genetic variability. But it depends on the situation. Alright? It depends on the situation. So when an individual moves from one population to another population, it increases the variability here. It increases the variability but loses the variability on the old population where the organism came from. Okay? So that is the gene flow. Now, example of that is pollination. Pollination promotes gene flow. Okay? So these pollens are carried by this pollinator that we have right here. In this case, the bee. Okay, the bee that we have. So it carries this pollen and transfer this pollen to another place and so on and then so forth. Alright, birds. Okay, so birds eating some seeds, okay, or seeds that was dispersed by the wind or water, creates this gene flow. Okay, plants also has this utilize this kind of mechanism. Okay, so the gene flow. Okay, because of this action, the wind, the water, the animals, all right, the seeds are distributed, okay, all throughout different places and interacts with another variation of that same plant. Then therefore they will reproduce, creates another variation, and then that's it. Okay, increase in variability of the organism. And humans, okay, in general. Okay, so because humans did travel through, okay, our ancestor from Africa, okay, our ancestor from Africa did travel a longer, they have a longer path of longer days or longer duration of traveling, and they reach all throughout the different parts of this planet, all different continents. They went through different places. Therefore, this particular event creates this particular gene flow. Okay, the migration of humans created this increase in variability. So that is why the variation of humans, if we talk about the human traits, all right, if you talk about the human traits, there are several traits in humans because of migration. Okay, because of the migration process that happened several million years ago. Okay, so these are the root. Okay, so these are the roots of our ancestor when they travel inland and adapted to certain environment they encounter. Okay, so that is why there are some Asians. If you look at Asians and compare it with Europeans and Americans and some Latin Americans that you have over here, they are completely different. Okay, the looks are completely different, but we are still human. Okay, only the trait differs, but we are still humans. Okay, so that is gene flow. Alright, so what are the things that we studied? What are this mechanism all about? Okay, this mechanism is part of the microevolution. So opposite of this one is the macroevolution. So what is macroevolution? That is the evolution in large scale. Alright, so what affects the evolution in large scale? And that is the movement of plates. Okay, so that is the movement of plates, the bombardment of the asteroids. Alright, so the climatic changes that happened in the environment, that is macroevolution. Now, what we talked about here, the four mechanism, the natural selection, the genetic drift, mutation, and the gene flow, they are part of microevolution. Those are mechanism that leads to microevolution because those four affects the frequencies of alleles in a population. Okay, those four can affect the frequency of alleles. So the probability of the occurrence of the certain allele in a certain population. So therefore, we called it microevolution. Now, to end up our video lesson right here, okay, so to end up our video lesson, life always finds a way. Okay, no matter what happened, alright, life always finds a way to survive. Okay, so the idea here is to survive. Okay, so that's it. These are the 4 mechanisms of evolution. And that ends up our topic for the mechanism of evolution. I hope you will be able to get value on the topic we discussed today. And if so, don't forget to like this video. If you have questions and suggestions, write them down in the comment section below this video. It will help me a lot in the algorithm for my YouTube channel. Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell for you to be updated for more science video lessons like this in the future. I'll see you next time, everyone. Enjoy learning, stay safe, and peace out.
Bakaみたい子供なのね